Alabama looks wide open now because permitless carry is real. But one wrong place, one wrong traffic stop, or one bad status can still flip legal to illegal fast. By Chapter 4, you'll see why the real question isn't, can I legally possess this gun today?
Chapter 1. Carry Baseline. Alabama is a permitless carry state. Some people even call it constitutional carry. If you are generally 19 or older and legally allowed to possess a pistol, Alabama does not require a general state permit just to carry that pistol concealed or in your vehicle. So yes, concealed carry is generally legal, and open carry is generally legal. Compared to a lot of states, Alabama feels simple. That simplicity is exactly why people get overconfident, because permitless carry does not mean the permit is useless. Alabama still issues pistol permits through the county sheriff. For most Alabama residents, the permit application lane generally starts at 19. There is also an 18-year-old route for certain active duty service members and some qualifying veterans. The age rule is about permits and carry, not buying. We'll cover purchase age in Chapter 5. So why even bother with a pistol permit if the state is permitless carry? First, travel reciprocity. Alabama's permitless carry laws applies in Alabama. The moment you cross state lines, the other state's rules matter. Second, legal cushion. A permit does not make you invincible, but in a few places we'll cover next, especially school zone issues and private property consent, it can still matter. Third, legal clarity. Carrying under a license gives you a document baseline of qualification, and in any interaction with law enforcement, that card can do a lot of quiet work. Quick note on long guns. Rifles and shotguns sit in a different lane. Alabama does not have a state ban on what politicians like to call assault weapons, and it does not have magazine capacity limits like some other states. The videos carry framework we're walking through today is primarily focused on handguns. Now, question for Alabama carriers. Do you prefer carrying with a permit or without one? Personally, I'd rather have the permit. Now that you have a baseline idea, the next question is where you can actually carry. Chapter 2. Prohibited places. Alabama is gun-friendly, but it's not carry anywhere. School is one of the biggest traps. Alabama's school law has nuance, but this is not an area to get cute with. Public school property and school buses are where people should slow way down. Do not walk into a school building armed unless you know you are specifically covered by a legal exception. And for pickup and drop off, keep the firearms secured in the vehicle. Do not handle it, and do not step out trying to prove a point. Federal law also creates a separate school zone issue within 1,000 feet of K-12 school property. This is one of those places where the pistol permit mentioned in Chapter 1 can still matter. Alabama permitless carry is state law. The federal school zone rule is a separate federal layer, and a qualifying Alabama-issued pistol permit gives you cleaner footing inside the 1,000-foot bubble. But even that permit only helps if you are legally allowed to possess the gun in the first place. Stay with me because Chapter 4 is where the carry question turns into the possession question. Alabama allows colleges and universities to create firearm policies for their grounds, but those policies must allow a law-abiding person to keep a firearm inside a privately owned vehicle if the vehicle is parked where it is allowed to be. The firearm is kept from ordinary observation, and if the vehicle is unattended, it is locked inside the vehicle or a locked compartment or container. Airports are a layered trap. The TSA checkpoint and sterile area are the hard federal line. Firearms are not allowed through the screening checkpoint, and if you are flying with one, it must be unloaded, locked in a hard-sided case, and declared to the airline. But curbside pickup, baggage claim, and parking are different lanes. Public access areas are not the same as trying to walk through TSA armed, but airport buildings can stack security rules fast. Law enforcement stations or offices, jails, prisons, detention facilities, certain mental health facilities, courthouses, district attorney offices, and buildings where a county commission or city council is meeting are all places where carrying can turn into a very bad day. If the building is telling you screened entry, that is not a suggestion. Post offices are their own federal trap. Postal rules say you can't carry or store a gun on postal property, and that can include the parking lot. Recent court rulings found those rules unconstitutional as applied to the plaintiffs and covered members, not the general public. So unless you know you're covered, treat USPS property as a no-go zone. Private property still matters too. Alabama permitless carry does not automatically open all private property. If you carry a pistol on property you do not own or control, and the owner does not allow guns, that's the line that matters. Consent controls. If you're told no or told to leave, you leave. A posted no firearms sign is a strong warning that the owner is not consenting. Now, unlike some states, Alabama does not have a blanket statewide ban just because a place serves alcohol. But bars and restaurants are still private property, and private owners control their property. If they tell you no guns or tell you to leave, once again, you leave. If you are participating in a demonstration or public protest, Alabama law can restrict carrying a firearm there as well. And even if you are just nearby, once law enforcement tells you a demonstration is happening and orders you out of the 1,000-foot area while armed, do not debate it. Just get in your car and leave. And that brings us to the place where most carry problems actually start, the car. Chapter 3, Vehicle Laws and Getting Pulled Over. Alabama vehicle carry is simple compared to a lot of states. You don't need a permit just to have a pistol in your vehicle, assuming you are legally allowed to possess it. But the car is not a magic bubble. People hear car legal and start acting like that means legal everywhere. It doesn't. For work parking lots, Alabama gives employees protection for storing a lawfully possessed pistol and ammunition in a privately owned vehicle. But there are conditions. If you are in the vehicle, the pistol needs to be kept from ordinary observation. If you leave the vehicle unattended, it needs to be locked inside the vehicle or compartment or a secured container. You'll see a similar locked vehicle rule for college campuses and some restricted public buildings, but don't treat your car like a universal escape hatch. Federal property, detention facilities, and private property can play by different rules. Now traffic stops. You get pulled over. Alabama is not automatically a duty to inform state just because the blue lights come on. But if a law enforcement officer asks whether you are armed with a concealed pistol or firearm and you knowingly have one concealed on or about you or in the vehicle, you must immediately and calmly inform the officer. Alabama also has a specific stop rule people forget. If there is a loaded handgun in the vehicle, do not knowingly touch it once the officer begins approaching unless the officer directs you to. That loaded handgun touch rule is not just etiquette. Violating it can be a Class A misdemeanor. And yes, during the stop, an officer may temporarily take custody of the firearm for safety reasons. If you are not being arrested and you are not an immediate threat, Alabama law says the firearm should be returned before you are released from the scene. Now here's the bigger question. Are you even allowed to possess the gun in the first place? Chapter 4, Prohibited People. If you are prohibited, none of the carry talk matters. Not permitless carry, not the vehicle rule, not open carry, not your opinion on the Second Amendment. None of it. Possession itself becomes the problem, and a lot of people think they are legal until they find out they are not. Common prohibition-person categories include felony convictions, certain crimes of violence, misdemeanor domestic violence, valid domestic abuse protection orders, certain mental health findings, unlawful immigration status, unlawful drug use or addiction, and one Alabama category in the books, habitual drunkards. Yes, Alabama actually uses that phrase, and people argue over it because it sounds vague, old-fashioned, and easy to misunderstand. Also, Alabama does not always wait for a final conviction to make firearm possession dangerous. Alabama has what I like to call the charge and released trap. For certain violent or domestic violence related charges, Alabama law can make firearm possession illegal after you've been charged and released pending or during trial before the case is finally over. If you are facing one of those cases, do not assume not convicted yet means good to carry. Talk to a lawyer before touching a firearm. Now, that is not the same thing as a classic or traditional red flag law like some other states, but the practical point is the same. You do not always have to be finally convicted before firearm possession becomes legally dangerous. Court orders, protection orders, pending violent charges, mental health findings, drug issues, and old criminal history can all change the answer. So before you argue about carry method, answer the real question. Am I legally allowed to possess? Because if the answer is yes, the next question is understanding Alabama's purchasing laws. Chapter 5, Purchasing. Buying a gun in Alabama is pretty straightforward. At a gun store or licensed dealer, federal law controls most of the counter process. You fill out the federal paperwork, show identification, and the dealer runs the background check through NICS, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. In some cases, a qualifying Alabama pistol permit can work as a NICS alternative if it meets federal requirements, though dealers can still choose to run the check. Now, the response usually comes back in one of three ways: proceed, delay, deny. If the response is delay, federal law may allow the dealer to transfer the firearm after 3 business days if no denial is returned. although many dealers choose to wait for the final answer. In Alabama, you don't have to deal with a state waiting period, purchase permits, or general firearm registration system. But now age matters. For a licensed dealer, federal law generally sets the line at 18 for rifles or shotguns and 21 for handguns. For buyers under 21, federal law could stretch the review up to 10 business days when the enhanced under 21 check is triggered. And lying to get a gun through a dealer or private seller can turn into a serious charge. Then there's the classic federal disaster, the straw purchase. A straw purchase is not just buying for a prohibited person. The trap is lying about who the actual buyer is. A genuine gift can be legal, but if you are only pretending to be the buyer on the paperwork while really acting for someone else, that can become a federal case. Now, private sales are where bad transfers happen regularly. Alabama does not require background checks for most ordinary private in-state transfers between private individuals. But private sale does not mean law-free and no responsibility. You cannot knowingly transfer a firearm to someone you know or have reason to believe is prohibited. So Alabama's rules are simple. Dealer sales run through the federal system. Private sales put judgment on you. The state gives owners a lot of freedom, but legal carry means nothing if your setup is uncomfortable, shifts around, or prints so badly it defeats the point of carrying concealed. Responsible carry only works when your gear is practical enough to wear in real life. Jane's going to show you how everyday carry can get even easier.
Hey, if you made it this far, you probably care about doing things right. If you've tried carrying in gym shorts or sweats, it just never feels quite right. Waistband moves, holster shifts, it's fine, but it's not dialed. That is why we built Relaxed Fit Tactical. Our shorts lock onto an inner belt, so your holster clips to a hidden belt, not just fabric. Same setup, same draw, just more comfortable. So if you carry every day, this just makes sense. Links below.